I'm Laya, 35 years old, an office manager in a small Ohio town where cornfields stretch wide and neighbors wave even if they don't know your name. For years, my life felt like a steady rhythm: work, home, love, ordinary, safe, almost comforting. But comfort can be deceiving, and safety can be an illusion. I learned that the hard way. Now, I live with my mom in a quiet condo that feels like a sanctuary, but getting here took everything breaking apart first. The story begins with Henry, my husband of 9 years. For nearly a decade, he was my anchor, my best friend, and the person I thought I'd grow old beside. Every moment with him felt like a gift. Henry was 6 years older than me, a man with a laugh that could light up a room and a way of listening that made you feel like your words actually mattered. I fell in love with him at a friend's barbecue. He spilled mustard on my favorite sundress, then spent the rest of the night apologizing with a sheepish grin. I should have been annoyed, but instead I found myself laughing too. That's how it started, with clumsy hands, a ruined dress, and a spark that neither of us wanted to ignore. Henry wasn't just kind, he was solid. The kind of man who held the door for strangers, who tipped waitresses even when the service was bad because maybe she's having a hard day. He made people believe in goodness simply by being himself. But life has a way of testing even the best souls. Henry worked for a big corporate firm in Columbus. On the surface, he was good at it, charming clients, crunching numbers, putting on that easy smile everyone admired. But behind closed doors, he was unraveling. His boss was a tyrant, the kind of man who tore you down in front of everyone else just to feel taller. Henry came home later and later, shoulders heavy, his smile thinner each week. At first, I told myself it was just a rough patch, that he'd push through. But then I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the way his laughter became forced, the restless nights when he'd toss and turn until dawn. One night I found him sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m, his hands buried in his hair. "I can't keep doing this, Leia," he whispered. His voice cracked. "They want to break me." I sat down beside him, heart aching. "Then don't let them," I said. "You're not chained to this job. You're more than what they see." It wasn't easy, but eventually Henry quit. By then the damage was already deep. Panic attacks, insomnia, a hollow look in his eyes. He saw a psychiatrist, started medication, and slowly, piece by piece, I watched him come back to himself. During those months, we lived on my salary alone. I managed schedules at a logistics company, and though it wasn't glamorous, I loved the order of it. It gave me purpose when everything else felt uncertain. Henry's recovery was like watching winter melt into spring. I'd catch him humming in the kitchen again, flipping pancakes like nothing had ever been broken. His psychiatrist was thrilled with his progress, and so was I. After 3 months, he landed a new job at a smaller firm. The pay was less than half of what he used to make, but it didn't matter. He was finally happy. The role was in data analysis, his true passion, and when he came home, his eyes lit up with stories about projects and discoveries. We started talking about having kids, late-night conversations in bed, whispers about baby names, what kind of parents we'd be. But with our finances tight, and with my mom's health beginning to weigh on me, we decided to wait. "It's okay," Henry would say, kissing my forehead. "It's just us for now, and that's enough." I believed him, but deep down, I felt the ticking of time. My mom had been living alone since my dad passed when I was in middle school. She was fiercely independent, the kind of woman who carried her world on her shoulders without complaint. But then came the accident, a car crash that left her paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair. The house she lived in, the one I grew up in, was a creaky old place with narrow halls and steep steps. Suddenly, it wasn't a home anymore. It was a cage. I remember breaking down one evening, confessing to Henry through tears that I didn't know what to do. Without hesitation, he looked me in the eye and said, "Then she comes to live with us." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you serious?" "Of course," he replied softly. "She's your mom. That makes her my family too." It was in that moment I realized just how deeply his kindness ran. He'd always treated my mom with respect, but this was different. He wasn't just offering her a place to stay. He was offering her dignity, comfort, and love. My mom cried when we told her, insisting she didn't want to be a burden. But Henry just smiled and said, "You could never be a burden, not to us." And that's when Henry's grandfather stepped in. He was a farmer, a man of few words, but the kind of presence that lingered long after he left a room. He adored Henry, saw in him the goodness his own children often overlooked. When he grew sick, he began dividing his assets, and he gifted us something we never expected, a piece of land just outside town. A sprawling, beautiful plot only 10 minutes from Henry's parents' house. It felt like a miracle, like the universe had opened a door just for us, a place where we could build a home not only for ourselves, but for my mom too. I remember standing there the first time we visited the land, the breeze tugging at my hair, Henry's hand warm in mine. "This is ours," he whispered, eyes shining. "For you, me, and your mom." I wanted to believe in that dream with all my heart, and for a while I did. But as I'd soon learn, blessings sometimes stir jealousy in others. Even as our future began to rise from the soil, unseen cracks were already spreading beneath it. The plot of land Henry's grandfather gave us became more than soil and grass. It became possibility. A blank canvas where we could paint the life we had only whispered about until then. But dreams have a price, and for us, the price was a mortgage that no bank seemed eager to approve. Henry's new job didn't impress lenders. He hadn't been employed there long enough, and the salary was modest compared to what he'd once made. We were turned down again and again. Each rejection delivered, with a polite smile that left us hollow inside. Still, Henry wouldn't give up. "They don't see it yet," he told me, voice firm. "But we'll find someone who does." He was right. Months later, we found a lender willing to take a chance. The day we signed the papers, Henry squeezed my hand so tightly I thought he might cut off the circulation. "We're building this," he said, "no matter how long it takes." And we did. The house was designed with my mom in mind. Single story, wide doorways, no steps. We made sure sunlight streamed into every corner. Her room had its own kitchenette, so she could make her tea without having to ask for help. It wasn't just a house, it was independence wrapped in wood and nails. Every visit to the construction site was like stepping into a promise. We'd stand in what would someday be our living room, sawdust swirling around us, and Henry would grin, boyish and proud. "This is ours, Laya, for all three of us." My mom cried the first time she saw the foundation poured. "I never thought," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never thought I'd live in a place like this." I hugged her and said, "You deserve this, Mom. You've given me everything. Now let us give something back." For weeks I carried that joy like a shield. But no shield is perfect, and soon the cracks showed. Henry's mother and his sister Megan live close by, and the day we told them about the house, their reaction was less celebration and more disdain. Megan, a part-time real estate agent with a sharp tongue, let out a laugh that stung more than words. "So you're dragging your mother-in-law into your brand new house?" she said, smirking. Interesting choice. Henry's mom was worse. She didn't even bother with sarcasm. She muttered under her breath about how marrying someone like me, a girl from a modest background, not their kind of people, would only bring trouble. I bit my tongue, but Henry didn't. He told them straight that this was our life, our decision, and that they had no say in it. Still, their resentment hung in the air like a storm cloud you can feel but can't see. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch Henry staring at the ceiling, his jaw clenched. "Do you ever think they'll come around?" I asked once. He turned toward me, his eyes heavy. "No, but they've taught me something valuable." "What's that?" "How not to love," he said quietly. "How not to treat family." His words settled between us like a vow. The day we moved into the finished house was supposed to be one of celebration. The walls still smelled of fresh paint, the cedar floors gleamed, and my mom's face lit up like I hadn't seen in years. She wheeled herself into her new room, sunlight spilling across the floorboards, and whispered, "It feels like a dream." Henry and I had spent weeks preparing. Slippers by the door, a ramp to the yard, every corner touched with thoughtfulness. For one shining moment, it felt perfect, like all the hard work, all the tears, had finally been worth it. And then Henry's family arrived. Megan and her husband came late, no apology, stomping mud across the floors like they owned the place. Henry's mom followed, her lips pursed as if every wall offended her. "Nice place," Megan said, smirking. "Kinda smells like Grandpa's old barn, though. Maybe get some air fresheners?" She ignored the slippers I offered, laughing when I suggested they'd help keep the floors clean. "Oh, Laya, relax. You can mop later." Her husband stomped around loudly. opening doors without asking, whistling as though inspecting property he might buy. My stomach twisted, but I swallowed the anger, trying to hold on to the fragile joy of the day. Then Henry's mother walked straight into my mom's room. She looked around, her eyes narrowing at the kitchenette, the wide windows. "I'll take this room," she said sharply. "Why does she get the best spot?" The words hung heavy. My mom froze, her hands trembling on her lap. Before I could say anything, Henry's mom turned toward her and sneered. "Bet you're glad you had that accident, huh? Got you out of that dump you lived in and into this palace. Talk about luck." My mom's face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice too small to defend herself. I felt rage rising in me like fire, but Henry spoke first. He stepped between them, his voice steady but blazing with fury. "What the hell did you just say?" The room went still. Henry's mother flinched, but Megan rolled her eyes, tossing her hair. "Wow, Henry, way to make us feel welcome. You build a house, and suddenly you're king of the world." "This is Grandpa's land, you know," Megan's husband added with a smirk. "Practically ours, too." Henry didn't flinch. "No, this is our home, and you don't get to insult my wife or her mother here, not ever." But they weren't done. His mother's eyes narrowed, and she pointed straight at me. "You're the problem, Leia. You always have been. My son's stuck taking care of your crippled mom because of you. You're a curse." My breath caught, my vision blurred. The words cut deeper than I thought possible, but Henry's voice was like steel. "Enough," he snapped. "You think her accident was lucky? You call my wife a curse? You should be ashamed. Get out." For a moment, no one moved. Then Megan scoffed, muttering something under her breath, and stormed out with her husband. Henry's mom followed, her face twisted with contempt. Silence filled the house after they left. My mom whispered, "I'm sorry. I ruined the day." Henry knelt beside her, taking her hand. "No," he said firmly. "This is your home. You don't owe them anything." That night, I lay in bed with Henry's arm around me. I wanted to hold on to the warmth of his love, but all I could feel was dread. His family lived just down the road, and this was only the beginning. For a while after that disastrous housewarming, we tried to settle into a rhythm. My mom was smiling again, tending to the herb garden we'd built just outside her window. She loved wheeling herself down the ramp into the yard, where the sun soaked her face and the scent of rosemary lingered in the air. Henry and I clung to those simple joys. Movie nights with bowls of popcorn, slow dances in the kitchen when a song came on the radio, whispers of baby names we kept tucked away like secrets. In those quiet hours, it was easy to forget the venom his family had poured into our home. But peace never lasts long when bitterness lives just down the road. Megan and Henry's mother didn't stop at insults. They started spreading whispers in town. Little digs dropped into conversations at church or the grocery store. "Did you hear Henry gave up a 6-figure job just to babysit his crippled mother-in-law?" Megan would sneer. Or, "Poor Henry, such potential wasted on the wrong woman." His mother would sigh dramatically. Word always found its way back to me. I told myself to ignore it, but every time I overheard the pity in a neighbor's voice or saw someone glance at my mom's wheelchair too long, it chipped away at me. Henry saw it too. He'd come home some evenings with his fists clenched, his jaw tight. "They won't stop," he muttered one night, pacing the living room. "It's not enough to hate you. They want everyone else to hate you too." "Let them talk," I whispered, though my voice wavered. "We know the truth." But even as I said it, I could feel doubt creeping in, because poison doesn't need to be true to work. It just needs to be repeated. The turning point came one Sunday afternoon. We'd invited a few close friends over for lunch. Nothing fancy. Sandwiches, iced tea, laughter filling the house. For once, it felt normal. Happy. Until Megan showed up uninvited. She swept into the kitchen like she owned it, her heels clacking against the floor, her smile too sharp. "Well, well. Quite the party," she said loudly, her eyes darting around the table. "Guess we didn't make the guest list." Henry's face darkened. "Megan, this isn't the time." "Oh, but it is," she shot back, pulling out a chair without asking. She sat down, crossing her legs, and leaned forward. "You think you can just erase us from your life? From Grandpa's land? You think building this house makes you better than us?" The room went quiet. Our friends exchanged nervous glances, clearly uncomfortable, but no one moved. Henry leaned across the table, his voice low and dangerous. "Leave. Now." But Megan only smirked. "Not until everyone here knows the truth. Mom says Laya's milking you dry, that you're stuck raising her crippled mother because she can't take care of her own family. She says..." "Stop!" My voice cracked like glass. Everyone turned toward me. My hands were trembling, but my anger burned hot. You don't get to talk about my mother like that. Not here. Not ever. For a moment, Megan faltered, caught off guard by the fire in my tone. But then she laughed. Sharp. Cruel. Look at you. Pretending to be strong. But we all know you're nothing but dead weight around Henry's neck. Henry slammed his hand down on the table, the plates rattling. Enough, Megan. You don't get to come into my home and insult my wife. You don't get to spread your poison here. Get out. Something flickered in her eyes then. Anger, but also fear. She stood abruptly, muttered something about us being ungrateful, and stormed out. The slam of the front door echoed through the walls. Our friends sat frozen, unsure what to say. My mom, silent until then, spoke softly. Don't let them take your peace. But peace was already gone. That night, Henry held me close as I cried. They'll never stop, will they? I whispered into his chest. No, he admitted, but I'll protect you, always. He meant it. I knew he did. But as I lay awake long after he drifted off, staring at the shadows stretching across the ceiling, a cold thought wormed its way into me. Love can only shield you for so long. And in the darkness, I felt the first chill of something I couldn't yet name, something heavy, something waiting. The weeks that followed were quieter, though the silence felt uneasy. Megan kept her distance after that confrontation, but I knew it wasn't out of respect. It was the silence of someone plotting. Henry tried to distract us from the tension. He threw himself into his new job, his eyes bright again, as he explained projects I barely understood but loved listening to. He hummed while cooking dinner, slipped notes into my work bag. Smile today, beautiful. For a while it felt like maybe, just maybe, life was steadying. But shadows don't always come from outside. Sometimes they bloom from within. It started with headaches. Henry brushed them off at first, blaming stress, long hours at the computer. Then came the dizzy spells. I'd catch him gripping the counter as if the room had tilted beneath his feet. One night, I woke to find him standing in the hall, swaying, his face pale. Henry, I whispered, rushing to steady him. He gave me a strained smile. Just got up too fast. But the worry etched into his features told me he didn't believe his own excuse. Then came the day everything shattered. I was at work, sorting through delivery schedules when my phone rang. My mom's number flashed on the screen. Her voice was trembling. Laya, she said, it's Henry. He collapsed at work. You need to get to the hospital. My blood ran cold. The room spun. I barely remember the drive, just the pounding of my heart and the desperate prayers spilling from my lips. Please, God, please let him be okay. Please. When I reached the hospital, the sight of him broke me. Henry lay on the bed, tubes snaking from his arms, machines beeping in a steady rhythm that mocked the silence in the room. His skin looked gray, his lips dry. A doctor approached, words spilling out that I couldn't fully grasp at first. Brain tumor. Critical condition. We'll do what we can, but you need to prepare yourself. He may not wake up. It felt like the ground gave way beneath me. I sank into the chair beside him, clutching his hand, whispering his name over and over as if saying it might call him back. We were supposed to see a movie this weekend, Henry, remember? You promised you'd laugh at all the dumb jokes. My mom arrived soon after, wheeled in by a nurse. The moment she saw him, she broke. Her sobs filled the sterile room, pulling my tears free until we were both clinging to each other, drowning in grief we weren't ready to face. That night, despite every whispered prayer, Henry slipped away. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there numb, staring at his face, still and silent, as if the world had stopped making sense. It was like watching the sun fall out of the sky. But the world didn't stop, and soon the door opened. Megan and Henry's mother swept into the room, their presence like ice water poured over open wounds. Megan's eyes flicked to the machines, then to me. What did you do? She hissed. Poison him for the insurance money? Her mother's face twisted with contempt. Bad things always happen around you. You're a jinx. You ruined him. Their voices sliced through me, sharp and merciless. I wanted to scream, to claw back at them with every ounce of fury in my body, but I couldn't move. I was too broken. My mom's hand squeezed mine. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady. Enough, she whispered at them. Enough. But they didn't stop. They turned on their heels, muttering about how Henry had changed, how I had poisoned his loyalty, as if grief gave them license to rewrite his life. By the time they left, the room felt colder, emptier. The funeral came days later. and if I thought their cruelty had reached its peak, I was wrong. Henry's coworkers filled the chapel, sharing stories of his kindness, his humor, the way he'd light up a room. Their tears spoke of how deeply he was loved. But his family, his own blood, they didn't come. When I told them the funeral details, his mother had laughed bitterly. "We're not coming. He chose you and your mother over us." Megan didn't even reply. So I stood by Henry's casket, surrounded by strangers who had become friends, but abandoned by the family who should have mourned him most. I whispered promises into the stillness, promises to keep his memory alive, to carry his love forward, even when the weight of his absence threatened to crush me. And as the coffin lowered, I felt something dark curl inside me. Grief, yes, but also dread, because if they could hate me in life, what would they do to me now that Henry was gone? Coming home after the funeral felt like walking into a fog. My mom and I were drained, our eyes raw from crying, our bodies hollowed out by sorrow. The silence of the house pressed down on us. Every corner whispered of Henry, his jacket still on the chair, his coffee mug by the sink, the faint echo of his laughter lingering in the walls. I wanted to collapse into bed, to bury myself in grief, but something felt off. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed a light glowing inside the living room. My stomach tightened. "Did we leave that on?" I asked, frowning. My mom shook her head. "No, we turned everything off." At first, I told myself it was grief playing tricks, the way loss can scramble your memory. But when I unlocked the door, the sound of the TV blaring hit me like a slap. My mom's hand gripped my arm. Her voice trembled. "Laya, what's going on?" We stepped inside and my heart dropped. The living room was unrecognizable. Our cozy couch, the one Henry and I had picked out after weeks of saving, was gone. The coffee table where we'd spilled popcorn during late-night movies, gone. In their place sat mismatched chairs and boxes stacked against the walls. And on one of those chairs, legs crossed, takeout container in hand, was Megan. Her husband lounged beside her, scrolling on his phone like he owned the place. I froze, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Megan looked up, a smirk curling her lips. "Oh, Laya, you're back. Don't just barge in like that. This is our house now." My mom gasped, her hands trembling against the wheels of her chair. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "Your house?" My voice cracked. "This is our home. You can't just—" Megan waved a hand dismissively. "Relax. We sold your stuff. Got a decent price, too. Nice taste, by the way. But no one wants things a dead man touched. Bad luck, you know." Her husband chuckled without looking up from his phone. "Yeah, real bad energy." My skin burned with fury. "You sold Henry's things? Our things?" Megan shrugged like it was nothing. "A resale company came by. Easy money. Besides, you don't need all this space. You and your mother can figure something out." I felt my knees weaken, my hands trembling with rage. Those weren't just things. They were memories. Pieces of Henry's life. Our life. The table we built together. The couch where he fell asleep against my shoulder. Every item a piece of him. And she'd traded them for cash. My mom's face flushed red, her voice shaking with fury. "How dare you? This was Henry's gift to us. His love is in these walls." Megan rolled her eyes. "Don't get dramatic. We left you some boxes." She gestured lazily to a pile shoved into the corner. "See? We're not monsters." I wanted to scream, to tear the smugness from her face, but instead I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called the resale company. My voice cracked as I explained what had happened. The woman on the other end gasped, promising to treat the items as stolen and to return everything they could. Relief flickered in me, but it was drowned by the violation pressing in from every corner of the house. Standing in my own living room, surrounded by strangers' furniture, I felt like an intruder. Like the home Henry built for us had been poisoned. That night, Mom and I retreated to her room, the only space they hadn't touched. I sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the walls, my chest aching. She looked at me with eyes both tired and fierce. What would Henry say, Laya, if he saw this? I closed my eyes, picturing his face, his steady voice. He'd tell us to walk away. He always said some people will never understand kindness, no matter how hard you try. Tears stung my eyes. He'd say they're not worth our fight. Mom nodded, squeezing my hand. Then let's not fight them. Let's save ourselves. And in that moment, I knew. Staying here, in this house, haunted not just by Henry's absence, but by their cruelty, would destroy us. We had to leave. But leaving would feel like losing Henry all over again. The morning after Megan's invasion, I stood in the kitchen staring at the empty space where our table used to be. It wasn't just furniture that was missing, it was Henry. Every scrape of a chair, every dent in the wood had carried his laughter, his touch. Now it was all gone, pawned off like it meant nothing. The house no longer felt like home, it felt like a crime scene. I walked into the living room, where Megan's mismatched chairs still sat. They hadn't even bothered to remove their trash. Takeout boxes, greasy napkins, an open soda can left on the windowsill. The audacity of it churned my stomach. My mother wheeled in behind me, her voice low. "We can't stay here, Leia. This isn't ours anymore. They've tainted it." Her words cut deep because I knew they were true. But how could I leave the place Henry built for us? He'd designed this house with love in every detail. Leaving felt like betrayal. I tried to hold on. I really did. That week, I scrubbed every surface, lit candles, rearranged the few items the resale company returned. But no matter how hard I tried, the house felt colder, darker. Every corner whispered of what Megan had done, of what we'd lost. At night, I'd lie in bed and hear echoes. Henry's laughter that wasn't there, the phantom creak of the couch that no longer existed, and beneath it all, Megan's voice replayed in my mind like poison. Bad luck. Dead man's things. This is our house now. One evening, after days of restless silence, I turned to my mom. "I can't do it. I can't breathe here anymore." Her eyes softened. "Then don't. Henry wouldn't want you to suffer in these walls. He'd want you to be free." That night, impulsively, I opened my laptop and searched for apartments. Hours later, I found one. A small, accessible unit with wide doorways and a balcony where my mom could sit in the sun. I signed the lease before I could talk myself out of it. 3 days later, we packed what little we had left and moved out. I thought leaving would feel like defeat. Instead, it felt like ripping off a bandage that had festered too long. Painful, yes, but freeing. Still, as I shut the door for the last time, I couldn't stop the tears. This was the house Henry had dreamed of, the one he promised would be ours forever. Walking away felt like losing him all over again. But grief has a way of sharpening you. On the drive to our new apartment, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't let his family destroy what little peace I had left. Henry had once joked about his multiple life insurance policies. "When I'm gone, you and your mom will be set." At the time, I'd laughed, swatting him for even mentioning such a thing. Now those policies became our lifeline. They gave us stability, enough to live without begging, without fear. And then there was the mortgage. The house had been in my name only. Henry's job history had made him ineligible. That meant Megan and her mother had no claim. If they wanted to squat there, fine. I stopped paying the bank. I knew what would happen. After 4 months, it would be seized and auctioned off. It wasn't revenge, it was survival, but part of me couldn't help the grim satisfaction. Because for once, I held the power. 4 months. That's how long it took. At first, Megan and her mother acted like queens of the castle. They moved freely into the house Henry had built for us, posting photos on social media of their new home. Megan captioned one picture of her kids playing in the yard, "Blessed with Grandpa's land." The nerve of it made my blood boil, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Time was already working against them. My mom and I settled into our small apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. Wide doors, no stairs, and a balcony where she could sit in the morning sun with a book in her lap. Every time I saw her smile there, I reminded myself, this was the right choice. This was freedom. Meanwhile, I stopped paying the mortgage. Quietly, strategically. I knew the bank's process. They'd issue warnings, then notices. Megan and her mother ignored them, convinced the house was theirs. I didn't tell them otherwise. Then the day came. I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone buzzed with a flurry of messages. Megan's name lit up my screen again and again, her texts frantic, full of capital letters and exclamation points. "The house is being sold. What did you do? The bank locked us out. Answer me, you devil." I set the phone down, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with something sharper. Justice. When I finally answered, Megan was screaming before I could speak. "The bank came, Laya. They're auctioning the house. How could you? This is our inheritance." I let her words spill out, her anger crashing like waves. Then, calmly, I said, "The mortgage was in my name. You knew that. The bank doesn't care about your inheritance. It was never yours." For a moment, there was silence. Then her mother's voice chimed in from the background. shrill and desperate. "Laya, please. We have nowhere to go. We sold our house years ago to pay debts. We thought this was our chance to start over. Please, help us." I closed my eyes, the weight of every insult they had ever thrown at me pressing down. Crippled mother, curse, jinx, poison. I almost laughed, the irony too thick to ignore. "You made it clear what you thought of me," I said quietly. "You told me I ruined Henry. You told me I was a curse. Why would I help you now?" Megan exploded, her voice cracking. "Because you're evil. You planned this. You wanted us homeless." I ended the call. My heart pounded, but I felt steady. For years they had taken and taken, my peace, my dignity, my husband's memory. Now, for once, they had nothing left to take. The house went to auction within weeks. The furniture Megan had bought was hauled out and left on the curb. She had quit her job, certain she'd live off Grandpa's gift. Her mother had gambled away what little money they had. Now they were both scrambling. And I didn't lift a finger to stop it. The weeks after the auction felt strangely quiet. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with petty insults or veiled threats. Instead, Megan and her mother called in desperation. At first, I ignored them. Their names flashing across my screen felt like ghosts knocking at my door. But eventually, curiosity, or maybe closure, made me pick up. Megan's voice was raw, frayed at the edges. "Laya, please? We lost everything. The house, the furniture. Mom had to sell her jewelry just to cover rent, and now even that's gone. We don't know what to do." Her mother's voice chimed in behind her, shaky, but practiced in its manipulation. "We were wrong. We said things we didn't mean. You've always been stronger than us. Maybe you can help us start over?" The gall of it nearly made me laugh. These were the same people who had called me a curse, a jinx, a woman who had supposedly destroyed Henry. Now they wanted me to save them. "You want me to fix the mess you made?" I said softly. "No, I won't." The silence on the other end was heavy, thick with disbelief. Then Megan's composure snapped. "You devil!" she shrieked. "You think you've won? You'll pay for this." I hung up, my pulse racing but steady. For once, their rage didn't touch me. It was like watching a storm from behind glass, loud, violent, but unable to reach me. Because by then, I was already building a different future. Henry's life insurance policies had come through, more generous than I ever realized. He had always joked about it, saying, "When I'm gone, you and your mom will be set." I used to swat his arm when he said that, telling him not to tempt fate. Now those policies were the bridge between our grief and our survival. Combined with the proceeds from the bank's auction, we had enough to start fresh. I found us a condo in a secure building, with wide hallways and a spacious balcony where my mom could sip her morning coffee. It wasn't as large as the house Henry built, but every inch of it was ours, safe, untouched. The day we moved in, I unpacked Henry's reclaimed belongings, our couch, our coffee table, the little trinkets we had collected over the years. One by one, they filled the condo, transforming it from an empty space into a sanctuary. As I placed the last photo on the shelf, Henry's smile frozen in time, I whispered, "See, love? You're still taking care of us." Meanwhile, Megan and her mother spiraled. Without the house, they had no safety net. The parking lot Henry's grandfather once left them, sold years ago to cover debts. Megan's husband, tired of the chaos, walked out. Their savings evaporated, their reputation in shreds. They ended up in public housing, surrounded by neighbors who whispered about their late-night arguments and reckless behavior. It was ironic. They had tried to shame me for bringing my disabled mother into a home of love and dignity. Now they were the ones crammed into a space too small for their bitterness, their voices carrying through thin walls for everyone to hear. And I finally was free. Megan's calls grew less frequent after that, not because she had found peace, but because there was nothing left for her to bargain with. No house, no husband, no savings. Just the echo of her own rage in a cramped apartment she could barely afford. Word trickled back through town. Neighbors complained about shouting matches in the middle of the night, about Megan and her mother hosting loud barbecues on a balcony, barely big enough for a chair. Someone said the fire department had been called once, sparks flying too close to the building. Another whispered that eviction notices were on the horizon. It was almost surreal. These were the women who once strutted into my home, sneering at my mother's wheelchair, mocking Henry's kindness as weakness. Now, the same neighbors who used to politely nod at them crossed the street to avoid their chaos. I should have felt triumphant, and a part of me did. The bitter part, the part still bleeding from every insult they had carved into me. But another part of me just felt tired. Watching them unravel was like watching people drown while clinging to the very anchors that pulled them under. Their pride, their cruelty, it was eating them alive. Meanwhile, my world was slowly stitching itself back together. The condo was smaller than the house Henry had built, but it was ours in a way that felt purer. Every corner carried a sense of safety, of belonging. The balcony became my mom's sanctuary. She'd sit out there with a cup of coffee, sunlight on her face, her books stacked beside her. Sometimes I'd catch her smiling softly, almost at peace. And me, I began to breathe again, not without pain. Grief doesn't vanish. It lingers, sharp and tender, but it no longer strangled me. I found comfort in the little rituals Henry had loved, cooking his favorite pasta on Fridays, leaving fresh flowers on the table, playing the songs he used to hum in the kitchen. At first it hurt, each memory like a blade, but over time it became a way of keeping him close. One evening, as I watched my mom reading on the balcony, I remembered something Henry once said after a fight with his family. His voice had been weary, but certain. What goes around comes around. At the time, I hadn't believed him. I thought cruelty always won, that good people were doomed to be trampled. But now, watching Megan and her mother collapse under the weight of their own choices, I realized he had been right. Justice doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, like vines through cracks in the wall. And the irony was brutal. They had tried to take everything from me, my dignity, my peace, even my home. And yet here I was, living in light, surrounded by love, while they, who had laughed at my pain, now sat in the shadows of their own making. It was Henry's justice in a way, a justice he didn't live to see, but one I carried for him. Some nights I still wake up reaching for him. My hand finds the empty side of the bed, the silence pressing in like a reminder that he's gone. Grief doesn't follow a straight path. It twists, circles back, catches you off guard in the aisles of grocery stores or in the middle of a song on the radio. But over time, I've learned something. Grief can live beside joy. It doesn't have to destroy it. The condo became more than shelter. It became a haven. Each piece of furniture we reclaimed carried Henry's touch. The couch where he once dozed off with a book. The coffee table marked with the faint ring of his beer bottle. Even the chipped mug he refused to throw away. These weren't just objects. They were proof that love leaves traces you can hold. My mom flourished too. She filled the balcony with potted plants, turning it into a little garden in the sky. Some mornings, I'd find her smiling at the sunrise, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, her shoulders finally free of the heaviness she'd carried for so long. It struck me then, family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your battles, who defends you when you can't stand, who holds you together when you're breaking. By that measure, Henry was more family than anyone with his last name. And my mom, with her fierce strength, was my anchor. As for Megan and her mother, their downfall continued like a slow-motion collapse. Rumors of eviction circled. Megan's husband left for good, unable to stomach the chaos. Neighbors grew tired of their late-night shouting matches. Their world, once built on arrogance and entitlement, crumbled until nothing was left but bitterness. I didn't need to check in. I didn't need to witness it firsthand. Their fate was no longer my concern. Because my story was no longer about them. It was about carrying Henry forward, about living in a way that honored him. He had stood for kindness, even when it wasn't returned. He had believed in building something good, even when the world pushed back. So I chose to live like that, not by seeking revenge, but by choosing peace, by filling my days with small joys, cooking meals that smelled like love, laughing with my mom until tears rolled down our cheeks, sitting quietly with the memory of him when the nights grew long. Sometimes when the sun dips low and the balcony glows gold, I swear I can feel him there. Not as a ghost, not as sorrow, but as warmth. As if his love, stretched beyond this life, still wraps around us. Henry once told me, "See, Leia, I'll always take care of you." And in a way, he still does. To those who've walked with me through this story, through heartbreak, betrayal, and resilience, thank you. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Life will test you, break you, even try to erase you. But if you hold on, if you keep love alive, it will carry you through the darkest night into the light of a new dawn. That's what I found. light after darkness. And that's how I'll keep going, by carrying his light forward, always.